When we went to Italy, I was discouraged by other people. I wanted to do a language school for like 6-month intensive.
Mm-hmm.
I said, no, just get busy doing ministry, meeting people, starting church services, doing Bible studies, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. The business of church.
The business of church, yeah. All I can say is like that was a huge mistake.
In today's episode, I want to glean from the wisdom of my friend Kirk, a man with so much experience not only on the mission field as a missionary, but also in sending and encouraging missionaries as well. Today we're going to talk about things like why is first world mission still needed, language learning process, being a blessing to the city that you're serving, and encouraging missionaries to go out. All right, what's up, guys? I'm here with my friend Kirk. Kirk is the missions pastor at Calvary Boise, but also is what's not replanting, but revitalizing?
Revitalizing, yes.
Revitalizing a church, Cole Community, right?
Cole Community Church, yes.
Cole Community Church. But not only that, Kirk was a missionary in both Italy and England for 17 years, has a lot of really good insight on just the need for first world missions, how to care for and encourage missionaries, and he's just got a lot going on. I mean, even he's leaving us after a week and going through Spain to visit like 4 other people. So He's got a lot of connections, a lot of people he's really encouraging, and I'm very thankful for him, but just wanted to have a conversation with him today.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. It's good to be here. I've watched your podcasts over and over again, and now I'm sat in your living room studio, and it's great.
Yeah. I'm really interested because this conversations that as missionaries, a lot of people ask things like, well, why first world? Why not Africa? Why not Mexico? And I know you did a podcast recently hitting on this a little bit. I'd love for my people to be able to hear kind of your thoughts on this because, yeah, it's not as glamorous as building a hut or getting water, doing the hands and feet work. It's more dealing with kind of the soul and a lot of other things. So what are your kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. Well, I obviously served for, like you said, 17 years in European context, Italy, and then in England for a long time. And so I have a heart for what you're doing, and beyond just having a heart, I also see the need. And so this is kind of functioning as like we were joking earlier, like this is I won't say the name, but your podcast, and then I have a podcast that I'm starting through Calvary Boise for missions called the Collab Podcast. So we're kind of joint podcasting right now, I guess. But so in the one that I did, we talked a little bit about just how the perception of places like Congo or the perception of places like Mexico. Well, actually, those places are like 10% evangelical in Mexico, 19% evangelical in the Congo. And then when you look at the north of Europe and places like the Basque Country, you're looking at like 0.21 or 1.2 or like just 0.67 here in the Basque Country. So, I mean, really, when you do the math, even you look at the stats, which a lot of people in the missions world like to throw stats around, which can be helpful. And they like to talk about maybe the 1040 window and closed countries, which I believe in reaching those places. But the problem is then when for some reason, when you talk about Europe, the thought is, well, that's a reached context. That's a people that has access to the gospel. Okay, maybe historically to some degree, depending on what you mean by reached, and then maybe they have access because of abilities like the internet and other Bible translations and things like that. But when you live in this context and experience it, you realize actually most people just have never really heard the true gospel.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and do you think maybe not an obsession, but like an unhealthy view of maybe like you said, the 1040 window and unreached, like kind of popular words are like, oh yeah, these are the people we're going to get. Whereas I kind of see it more as calling, which is more important than necessarily, oh, we all need to be focusing on the 1040 window or the unreached. That's great because technically the Basque are considered unreached. But to me, it's the calling that God gave us, and then for you guys for Italy, and then for England.
yeah.
That is probably a better and more determining factor for each missionary being sent out is, are they staying true to the calling God has given them?
Yeah, I think that's really important. We just read in Galatians this morning, obviously, and Paul says, like, hey, I have basically agreed with Peter to be a missionary, so to speak, to the Gentiles and Peter to the Jews. I mean, I think that there is, like, whatever God calls you to, like, you have to respect and you have to honor that calling in somebody else's life. Now, obviously, like it's okay for people to ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, I have questions about different mission organizations or people
Mhm.
serving. And if you're going to support and engage with those missionaries, you should ask questions.
Absolutely.
That's fine. But to do what sometimes happens, which people write off a whole thing, a whole people group or a
Mhm.
whole nation because their perception of that people group, I think that's dangerous too. Like you said, the Basque people are an unreached people
Mhm.
group. um, they don't have evangelical churches. You've told your people that so many
Mhm.
times, but I can just attest to that. That's a reality. And so I just say, like, yeah, if God has called people to reach the Basque people, let them do that and
Mhm.
honor that calling and get behind that calling. Don't criticize that
Mhm.
calling in the sense that even if it's not what you're called to do, and if where you want to invest your resources, it's still a
Sure.
valid calling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost think we need a different word, even maybe for post Christian Europe,
Hmm.
maybe not unreached, because at one point, many places were reached. And even obviously, you see throughout all the Basque Country, there's cathedrals everywhere. And so everyone's, well, there's churches, right? Well, kind of, but they're empty. No one's there. No one goes anymore, especially with the history with Franco and everything. But unreached is almost an unfair because they were at some point. But now a lot of Europe and America, maybe heading this way slowly, is becoming less and less Christian. I don't know. We almost need a new term for it.
Yeah, I think that's true. And also Jesus said in the Gospels, he said one of the words he used, he says, occupy till I
Mm,
come. And if you think about like the lands of the world, the nations or the people groups, like, and you think about occupying them with the gospel, once the gospel comes to that place, it saturates a place, then you have to occupy that place.
mm,
Like we want that for America, don't we? We don't want it to be disoccupied with the gospel. And so shouldn't we want that for Italy or for, well, and Italy and the Basque Country maybe have never had a reformation even.
yeah.
So like we want them occupied by the gospel, and then we want them to continue to be occupied by the gospel. So I'd say, yeah, I think a different word and a different concept overall where, maybe we think of it in the sense that, um, that people group uh, has had a type of gospel or a
Mhm.
Christianization or Christendom cycle through, but now it's not a current, like, alive faith, like a vibrant movement, maybe,
Yeah.
of the gospel. And so, one example too is Turkey. The early church cycle through Turkey, look at it now.
Mhm.
The Hagia Sophia, the great church, is now a mosque.
Mhm.
And there's like 5,000 believers in Turkey, a country of millions, 75 million, I think. And so that's a culture in a country that it's cycled through. But do we say now, oh, don't reach Turkey
Mhm.
because they were reached? No, we don't say that. And we
Yeah.
shouldn't say that about the Basque people, Spain,
Mhm.
Italy, wherever. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, okay. So now let's talk. I'm interested, just again, more of your perspective.
Mhm.
You've worked with a lot of missionaries in a lot of different cultures. Um, how would you say maybe the missions method is different in first world versus third world country, or even, I mean, Asian cultures are very different than European cultures. So I don't know, like maybe specifically hitting on the European kind of, what do you think are great ways to connect with people who don't need windows put in their homes or roofs over their heads or things like this?
Yeah, I think that's important because like I said, when I came here to visit you this week, one of the things I've noticed is that you are just, as you walk around the city of Bergata, hundreds of people know you. And
Hmm.
that's just, by the way, a testimony to, if you're supporting this guy, like if you're supporting, and he didn't tell me to say this, by the way, but if you're supporting this guy, like you walk around and you are just like a shepherd in the city.
Hmm.
Like people know you already. A year and a half. I'm amazed by the grace of God, how he's
Hmm.
connected you with so many people. And so I would say, like, what are the methods? Like, definitely not. Like, nobody here needs you to give them like money per se. Nobody
Hmm.
here needs you to give them a place to live, though some people might. I mean, I'm sure
Hmm.
that that could come to the point, like in every Western society in America, there's times where you let people stay at your house for different
Yeah.
days, needs, and whatever it may be. But I think the methods here are just what you're doing, like building long-term intentional relationships
Hmm.
and having conversations and putting, as we said, like stones in people's shoes, where it's like, hey, They saw your character. They saw the character of a group of Americans you hosted. They saw the character of
Hmm.
how you served the city. They saw the character, and then they heard a aspect of the gospel, and then they heard another aspect of the gospel, and that's what I see you doing, and that's what I've always believed about ministry in general, but like especially where there's not like a big physical need.
Hmm.
And here's the reality: like Jesus, when he fed the 5,000, they got the physical need met, but most of them walked away.
Yeah.
And so we can do lots of good in the world and go to countries where they need food and water. That's all wonderful. We should do that. We're salt and light. But that's that even that doesn't guarantee spiritual reality for people.
Yeah.
So I think um I don't have like some secret
Sure.
code
Yeah.
or methods. You're doing them like
Hmm.
just long-term intentional relationships and putting stones in people's shoes and just loving people well and loving your
Hmm.
city. I think like that's a model for every Christian everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we kind of sometimes tend to do this thing where we feel like we need to separate 100% from the world around us instead of also blessing them, showing them that no, we care about you. If Jesus was walking through Bergata, if Jesus was walking through Boise, Idaho, he
Mhm.
would be caring for the people, getting to know them, knowing their names, knowing their hurts, their jobs, all the things. And so I think that's for me at least the example I want to follow is I want to know these people. I want to connect with them because I do care for them. I love this city. I know you love Boise and all the places you've been as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thankful for you guys this week. We went into our friend's English school. We were helping her. We were able to connect with the English camps that are going on this summer. And that was really great because those just are more ways we can just serve them. If the thing that we can provide for the city of Bergata is helping with English,
Yeah.
then great. We want to serve them that way, not for these uh, uh, oh, because we want all these things from them or we need these connections or whatever. We just want to show like, hey, we care about you. We want to serve you. We love you.
Yeah.
And I think that goes so far, especially kind of in that European or first world missions concept.
Yeah. I think that's what I've seen this week is it really is a need.
Mhm.
Like I had no idea perspective wise coming in, like, is English a need in Bergata? But people love it. I mean, they're asking you, like, hey,
Mhm.
can you come and bring some native speakers? Can you come? And I'm just like, wow, this is a real open door
Yeah.
from the Lord for you guys. Like, coming in, just questioning, like, what is Jordan actually doing?
Mhm.
Like every mission person is going to be like, what's his ministry look like? And I think seeing, like, man, over and over and over again, people are like, hey, please teach us English,
Mhm.
please. And you can just do good to the city. I mean, if you're a businessman, you
Mhm.
could probably start an English school and make a ton of money,
Oh yeah.
but you're doing it for the gospel, and
Mhm.
I think that's beautiful. And so, um, I think that concept of bringing something to the table, bringing something to the city, is really important in missions. And some people do that through. I mean, I couldn't do that in England
Mhm.
because they already spoke English,
No. Wow.
and better than me.
Yeah. The
Um,
more proper English.
so we found like a basketball center and we were
Mhm.
like pouring in and providing something that basketball knowledge that they didn't have and coaching they didn't
Mhm.
have. And because the basketball community is not as developed in England or
Sure.
whatever it may
Yeah.
be. So you're doing it with English. And I think those kind of ways of like, where can we find a key point to bless the city is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so now we've had conversations about even what you wish you could have done, like when
Mm,
you went to Italy,
mm,
in regards to language.
I
Because
love
yes,
that.
you've noticed there's a lot of people I can speak English with, but also we've noticed there comes a point where maybe, especially with spiritual concepts or different things, there's a line where they don't understand, or maybe a friend we're talking to who like shakes their head and they seem like they know what's happening, but in
Yeah.
reality they don't. I can have a lot of good conversations, but I find it so important to be learning Euskera and then Spanish. So, your perspective on this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things I've seen this week is that you're, in my opinion, doing things the right way.
Hmm.
You're laying a foundation. When we went to Italy, I was discouraged by other people. I wanted to do a language school for like 6 month intensive.
Mhm.
I said, no, just get busy doing ministry, meeting people, starting church services, doing Bible studies, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm. The business of
The
church.
business of church. Yeah. All I can say is like that was a huge mistake.
Mhm.
My wife suffered because of that.
Mhm.
She didn't learn the language as quickly as she could have. And so that actually was part of eventually. Now, who knows what would have happened, but eventually we end up moving on to England, which was God's plan.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like she really struggled in language. And maybe if she had been given a foundational opportunity to just do nothing but
Mm,
learn the language and culture for a good year, 2 years, something like that. So I think sometimes we put pressure on
mm,
missionaries to say, hey, you better learn you better start church, you better get
mm,
things going so you can prove that we're investing our money properly. I
yeah.
think that's a huge mistake in the missions world. And I try to counsel like other, missions pastors and people about that all the time. Like, let people get there,
Hmm.
learn a culture, learn the history, learn the story, learn the language. I mean, I saw this week even I went into a grocery store and I just said, "Sketty Costco," thank
Hmm.
you in
Usketa, yeah.
Euskera, yeah. And people's face lighted
Hmm.
up when they saw that I could just say one word of their language. So, I
Yeah.
mean, how much more important for someone who's going to be living here,
Hmm.
reaching people with the gospel. So, I think, yeah, that's super important.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, I think even that goes into so would that be a thing you encourage any missionary going out to a
Hmm.
place, a new missionary? Obviously, they're dealing with fundraising and all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
questions. Why are you going? Is this really God's calling? And so many different things. Getting onto the missions field can be a very challenging, long, and discouraging process.
Yeah.
But I think for us, that has been a great thing just this first year and a half so far, just really diving in, getting to know people, getting our kids in school,
Yeah.
learning the culture. Like, hey, there's no one out from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. most days. And
Yeah.
so, maybe that means we don't need to be out trying to find people to talk to because there's no one. But yeah, like, what would you encourage a missionary trying to go out, especially to a place that isn't necessarily their first language?
Yeah, I mean, if you can do language work before you
Yeah,
go,
sure.
that'd be great. But if you can't, or you can do some of that, I mean, you're never going to learn a language
Yeah.
by books or classes in the US or UK or wherever you
Hmm.
are if you're coming from that context. And same thing with like Latin Americans who become missionaries into the Muslim world, because there's a lot of those as well. So I would say, like, whatever your native language is, like when you get in country, whatever that country is to serve the Lord, I think that you should take a significant
Hmm.
amount of time to learn language and culture and play the long game
Yeah.
instead of the short game. I mean, we talk about that in with investing, we talk about
Hmm.
that with, and so really, again, yeah, if you're a missionary or if you're a missions pastor or a church sending people on mission, allow for that time and space for people to learn and to grow, and don't have a short sighted or short time frame
Hmm.
for people. um, because here's the thing, if you burn out when in the first year and don't make it through, or first couple of years, and don't
Hmm.
learn the language, that actually should be a good proving ground anyway. It's like, well, maybe they weren't called there for long term.
Yeah.
They did what they did, they learned the culture, they can instruct other people, they met some people, they
Hmm.
shared the gospel a little bit, and I think it's probably better to find that out at the beginning
Yeah.
in the first couple of years than it is to go for 20 years. And I know some missionaries, and again, not to disparage them at
Hmm.
all, but who can't speak the language after being in a place for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't disparage their ministry, but I say, that's not my goal. That's not what I
Yeah.
want to see people do. So I would encourage people to do exactly
Mm.
like you're doing. And I would encourage churches and other people to just take the pressure off. Like,
Mm.
don't look for results in a capitalistic kind of
Yeah.
like finance driven, market driven mindset in missions. Look for, um, are they growing and
Mm.
learning that story, that culture, and then are they having some evidence of God's grace in that
Hmm.
culture? So I
Yeah.
don't know if that helps at all.
Absolutely. Absolutely it does. I mean, there's things obviously you can say having way more experience than me and like being a missions pastor and seeing so many more people and knowing more people that I cannot say. It's just how it is. Maybe in 20 years I'll be on someone else's podcast or whatever
Yeah,
is popular in 20 years. And yeah, but yeah, so I'm very thankful for that. So how do we now get more, how do we encourage more missionaries? How do we just get more people stepping out in faith? I
yeah,
mean, we've talked about 3-month internships, 6-month, what those
yeah,
kinds of
yeah.
things, trainings. I don't know. What are your thoughts on some of that?
Yeah, so after being a long-term missionary, I actually kind of gave up a little bit on short-term
Mm.
missions because I'd had some bad experiences with teams coming over, and I hope wasn't a bad
No, this
experience
was
this week.
wonderful.
I'm sure there's things we can improve, but nonetheless, uh, yeah, I'd kind of given up on short-term missions,
Mhm.
and now that I'm back in the U.S., and I'm doing some short-term mission stuff, I'm seeing like, oh, actually, this could be pretty powerful. And I think this generation,
Yeah.
Gen
Gen
Z,
Z.
whatever we want to call the next
Hmm.
generation
And
after
then Gen
that,
Alpha.
and
Yeah.
yet Gen Alpha, I think that like they need to be encouraged
Hmm.
in their discipleship with Jesus. And one of the ways you can encourage people is to get them out of their comfort zone, out of their, sector of life, and get them experiencing other things. And so I think like YWAM's still doing it with their DTSs and all these kind of
Hmm.
things. Why can't the local church just take responsibility for that, working with partners like yourself and set up programs that are, gap years
Hmm.
for high school students coming out of high school. Maybe it's a college student, wanting to take a gap year. Maybe it's a young couple who senses a call for missions and it's like, hey, well, why don't you go here for 3 months, maybe to start
Hmm.
midterm, maybe you make a commitment for a year to start and explore a call, whether that's Bergata or other mission
Hmm.
environments. I think that what I'm seeing is that in this generation, it could be pretty powerful to do those things as steps in people's discipleship and then maybe helpful in contexts like this because, it's foreign and it's a different language, but it's not like too scary, I don't think,
No.
and so I think Bergata would be a great, how would I put it, like um, a
Launching point.
incubator
Yeah.
incubator for missions and discipleship and learning language. I mean, you could learn two languages here, Spanish and Euskera, and I mean, even that, if that showed that you were like a language guru, so to
Hmm.
speak, or you had
Yeah.
that ability, that gifting, then God could use you here or elsewhere, and you
Hmm.
would know by that experience, and then on site in situ, learning things from somebody like you, with some preparation from the local church. I think it could be beautiful. So I mean, that's one of the notes I made on my little Apple Note to go back is like, okay, how can we prepare for next year?
Hmm.
And then how can we put opportunities out there for people to actually engage in an internship, and this would definitely be an option.
Yes,
Brigada.
absolutely. We would love to have people come for it. I think we've talked about 3 months, probably the shortest, ideally,
Yeah.
because you get a lot of experience, but it's enough time to get to really kind of know the culture on a minimum. You don't necessarily need a visa, but you start to miss home a little bit, maybe. I don't know. And then six
Yeah.
months and a year, I think, are maybe potentially better. It just comes with more complications. But yeah, I think hands-on getting in here, just seeing the day-to-day, yeah, proving yourself, learning the language, like, okay, is this kind of thing really for me, or was missions
Mm,
just kind of oh, that seems really nice, or the ideal of what we as Christians like reach for, attain for.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's really great. So yeah, we would love people, and I'm sure many people would love to have help, people they can pour into, and for me, even one day either send out to another city in the Basque Country, or
Yeah.
they can be helping disciple and raise up someone here who will be sent out from Bergata to another city, because
Yeah.
the Basque, we're only one city and there's only so many missionaries in the Basque Country. We would love to see more and more of the Basque Country reached.
That's great. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and being here after the first week or the week I've been here, even the topography with the mountains, and you go over to these little villages. At first, I couldn't really get a concept of like what is Jordan talking about here, like how would that work? But now I can
Hmm.
see like you could just plant little, you know, things all over the Basque
Hmm.
Country in these villages, and it could end up being a little movement for the gospel. And even if you had people with the need for English, I'm sure that exists not just in Bergata, but
Yeah.
in other places too. And so we have a skill. We can bring that skill. We can bring that to bear and then use that for the sake of the gospel. So I hope that people want to do internships. I hope, and I think for you and for other missionaries, like, yeah, a summer 3 month thing can be helpful if you're doing
Hmm.
events and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But then other than that, you should probably try to commit to longer
Hmm.
because for the field worker, so to speak, it if you spend all your time and just, I guess, setting up environments for others, then
Hmm.
you maybe aren't, able to do what God's called you to do,
Yeah.
which is to reach the best people. So there's a balance
Yeah.
there and,
Absolutely.
unique kind of opportunity for you and other people like yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, any other thoughts? I know we've been all over the place, but I wanted to
Yeah.
hit on a lot of
Yeah.
your different experiences and perspectives. But
Well, I mean, just thank you so
yeah.
much for letting us come, and thank you for giving your life for the sake of the
Mm.
gospel. I think that people probably don't say that to missionaries enough. It's just like you are denying all the comforts of home. You're denying the comforts of family life
Mm.
and extended family. You're living a crucified life for the sake of the gospel. And so, praise God. Like
Mm.
it's not.
Yeah.
You know, not you, but it's Christ in you, the hope of glory. So thank you. Yeah. And other than that, just please support this guy. Love this guy because he is doing good work. And I want to testify to that as
Mm,
somebody who's been here. And so I don't know. I hope that doesn't come across cringy or as a sales pitch or anything like that, but I do believe
mm.
that or I wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for investing in us as we've been here this week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been fantastic. We didn't even hit on how hectic and it was you guys getting here,
Yeah.
canceled flights, so many things.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we both, I think, speaking to our children and our wives multiple times this week, things have changed, things have shifted. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't always look the same. To any of my Basque friends, if you've made it this far, remember you always have a place to stay in Boise, Idaho with Kirk and
Yes.
his family or the other people who have been here. They would love to host you, show you around, connect you with the Basque people there. And I mean, hey, also any of my American friends, if you want to go experience the Basque culture but not have to leave America, Boise's not far. They've got a Basque Culture Center, a lot of Basque people, a lot of events, different things. So you can even get hamon there and a lot of the Basque kind of
Yes.
style foods. So yeah, check it out. Thanks for being here, Kirk. Again, we loved having your team. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
See you guys later.